My fiancé left me for my arranged twin sister at the altar. A year later, his mother's phone call shattered everything they thought they knew. But before any of that happened, the real destruction started long before, back in my own home. I'm Sophia, female, 27, and I've had a strained, twisted relationship with my family for as long as I can remember. I have a twin sister, Talia, and somehow, despite being literal mirror images, she was always the golden child. Even now, I still don't understand how that happens with twins who are so alike. We had the same hobbies, the same interests, the same grades. Yet whenever we walked into a room, I could feel the air bend around her, like my parents' eyes only had room for her silhouette. They tried to hide it when we were little, but children aren't stupid. I felt it. Every single day. I remember one afternoon so clearly, it still stings. I must have been around 8. Talia had just been handed the first pick of toys, again, and I felt something inside me finally snap. I stood in front of my parents, palms shaking, and said, "I feel like you don't even see me. I feel unloved." My mother didn't even look up from folding laundry. "That's nonsense," she said sharply. "You both get the same things. Stop being dramatic." My father chimed in without hesitation. "Talia just makes quicker choices. You can't hold that against her. If you keep acting so selfish, you won't get far in life, Sophia." I remember staring at them, realizing nothing would ever change. The favoritism grew as we grew. Talia soaked it in like sunlight, blossoming in attention I never received. We drifted apart through middle school when she left our friend group to join the cool kids. Honestly, I didn't mind. At least my friends became truly mine and I could finally breathe at school. By high school graduation, we lived in the same house but in completely different worlds. But nothing compared to what she did at the end of senior year. I had worked so hard on my college applications. Every night I revised my essays, checked my drafts, asked teachers for feedback. I wanted a future that was mine. My friends were all aiming high and so was I. Talia, on the other hand, well, she didn't seem to work on anything. She barely talked about it, yet she was disturbingly confident. I ignored it. I wasn't nosy. But her smugness should have been a warning. When acceptance decisions came, she got in. I didn't. The world froze around me, a cold ringing in my ears. Something felt wrong. Then, by sheer luck, I discovered the reason. She had stolen my essay, my words, my work, and submitted it as her own. I confronted her in our bedroom, my heart pounding so loud I could barely hear myself. "You stole my essay," I said, holding the printed drafts with matching timestamps. "You actually stole my work." Talia didn't even bother hiding it. She just folded her arms and said, "Well, you weren't using it anymore. And it's not like you were going to get in anyway." I stared at her, stunned. "How could you? This is my future." She shrugged, unbothered. "Then you should have hidden it better." I wanted to scream. I wanted to tell my parents. But I already knew how that would go. They would say I was making a big deal out of nothing, that Talia didn't mean it, that I should take the high road. I was done being the accommodating one. Done being the doormat. So I made a decision. I opened my laptop, my hands trembling, and typed an email to the university. I explained everything, how the work was mine, attached my drafts, showed the progression and timestamps, the metadata, everything. I explained the situation at home, how my sister had submitted my essay without permission. I hovered over the send button for 5 full minutes. Then I clicked it. A day later, the university responded to her. Well, they did respond, swiftly and brutally. The university blacklisted Talia, stating in a cold, formal email that she had engaged in plagiarism during her application. I was sitting on my bed when she burst into the room, phone trembling in her hand. She dropped onto the chair and just stared at the screen, her face pale. What is this?" she whispered, her voice thin. I watched her eyes flick across the words, and then she slowly lifted her head to look at me. The hatred there was so sharp I felt it slice straight through me. "You did this," she said, each word trembling with rage. I didn't flinch. I just folded my arms and said, "You stole my essay." She opened her mouth, then closed it. She couldn't admit anything. Not to me. And definitely not to our parents. What would she even say? I stole Sophia's work? She knew she was trapped, completely cornered. For the first time in years, I felt like the scales had shifted, just a little. The atmosphere in the house turned suffocating. She ignored me, glared at me, hovered around like a storm waiting to break, but she didn't dare say anything to Mom and Dad. Unfortunately for her, they saw the email too. And in true dramatic fashion, they reacted exactly as expected. Heartbreak, disbelief, and righteous indignation, but not at Talia. At the university. My mom paced the living room, clutching the printed email. This is absurd. They're accusing our daughter of plagiarism? Talia? She would never. My father's voice boomed. They must have made a mistake. We are writing to them immediately. This is slander. Talia sat silently on the couch, eyes darting away from mine. She couldn't join the outrage without betraying herself. I stood in the doorway watching all of it unfold. A small, foolish part of me still hoped that once my parents contacted the university and received the detailed evidence, they might finally see the truth. When they sent their angry email demanding clarification, I waited. I prayed, for once, that the truth would matter. Then the reply came. A detailed, point-by-point explanation of what she had submitted, where it matched my original work, how the metadata aligned with my earlier drafts. All undeniable. All in black and white. My mother sank into a chair, stunned. My father's face stiffened, his jaw tightening. They both turned toward me with a heavy, crushing silence. Maybe, just maybe, they would finally understand. But I was wrong. My father slammed the email on the table. You reported her? Without talking to us. My mother's voice rose to a shrill pitch. You ruined her life, Sophia. You destroyed her future. Talia stole my essay. I said, stunned that this even needed explaining. Mom's face twisted, full of outrage. She made a mistake, but you didn't have to go behind our backs. We could have handled it. I laughed, bitter, exhausted. Handled it how? By letting her get away with it. That lit the fuse. They yelled at me for days. Every accusation possible. You're vindictive. You're jealous. You're selfish. You're cruel. None of it mattered that she had stolen from me. None of it mattered that her actions cost me my acceptance. The only crime they cared about was that I held her accountable without their permission. I told them their solution would have been exactly what it always was. Talia walking free, me being told to suck it up and apply somewhere else. The house turned into a battlefield and I was always the target. It was then I realized a truth that would shape the rest of my life. No matter what Talia did, she would never face consequences. And no matter what I did, I would always be the black sheep. The next few months were brutal. I lived quietly, avoiding them, avoiding her. I counted down the days until I could leave for college. I knew that once I stepped out of that house, I wouldn't return. And that's exactly what I did. The minute I moved to campus, I went low contact with my parents and completely cut off Talia. As far as I was concerned, she no longer existed. College felt like stepping into sunlight after years underground. I made good friends, worked hard, built a life that actually felt like mine. And that's when I met Matt. We clicked instantly. He was a senior, part of my friend group, warm, funny, steady in a way that felt unfamiliar but comforting. After years of chaos, he felt like peace. A couple of years into our friendship, right before graduation, he asked me out. I've liked you for a long time, he admitted, cheeks flushed. I just didn't know how to say it. I laughed softly, feeling my heart warm for the first time in ages. You could have asked me earlier, you know? He grinned, shy and delighted. Would you have said yes? Of course, I said. Our relationship came naturally, built on friendship, honesty, and trust. I told him about my family, all of it. The estrangement. The cruelty. Talia. The fact that I never wanted to speak to her again. He listened, brow furrowed. I can't believe a family could be like that, he said quietly. It doesn't make sense to me. His family was picture perfect. Loving, close-knit, supportive. Everything mine wasn't. My ordeal was alien to him. I respected the way Matt had grown up, and I respected how deeply he valued his family. Honestly, watching them together was adorable. The way his parents teased each other, the way his siblings piled onto the couch during movie nights, it all felt so warm, so natural. I'd never had anything close to that, and sometimes the jealousy hit me so sharply it felt like a physical ache. But I was clear from the beginning. I'm never going back, I told him one evening as we walked back from dinner. Not to fix things. Not to try again. You need to understand that. He squeezed my hand and nodded. I get it. I do. You don't ever have to do anything that makes you uncomfortable. He seemed okay with it. That's what made me trust him. I had no idea what was coming, that this would all lead to the worst chapter of my life. 2 years ago, when I was 25, Matt proposed. He had rehearsed his little speech, hands shaking as he held out the ring. I've never been more sure of anything, he said, voice thick with emotion. I said yes instantly. After nearly 4 years together, there was no doubt in my mind that he was the person I wanted to spend the rest of my life with. His family celebrated with so much joy it felt overwhelming. His mother hugged me like she had been waiting years for that moment. His siblings screamed, jumping around us. For the first time in my life, I felt like I actually had a family. A real one. One where I mattered. We spent the entire next year planning the wedding, venue tours, food tastings, decor ideas, honeymoon destinations. It was stressful, sure, and sometimes it brought out differences between us I hadn't paid attention to before. But we pushed through them because we wanted this to work. Then came the guest list. We were sitting at the dining table, papers spread everywhere, when he said, "I think we should invite everyone from my side. Uncles, aunts, cousins. You know how big my family is." I smiled a little. "I know. And that's fine. But I only want my friends. That's it." He hesitated for a split second. I caught it immediately. "Is there a problem?" I asked. "No," he said too quickly. "No problem." I let it go, until a week later when he came into the living room looking oddly tense. "We need to talk," he said gently. My stomach dropped. "About what?" "Your family," he said. "We need to invite them." I stared at him like he'd lost his mind. "What?" "I told you they're not part of my life. They don't even know I'm engaged." He exhaled, rubbing the back of his neck. "But it won't feel like a real wedding without family present." I felt a sharp sting of anger. The only two people required for a wedding are the bride and groom. You know that. He didn't back down. "It's just one day, Sophia. Whatever happened between you and them, you can set it aside for one day." "That's not how it works," I said, my voice cracking. "Inviting them is not neutral. It means I want to fix things. And I don't." We fought for days. Real, painful fights. The kind where words linger in the air long after the shouting stops. I nearly stopped speaking to him altogether. But a small, stubborn part of me still loved him enough to try to find a middle ground. Eventually, after a long back and forth, he finally told me the real reason. "I don't want my family thinking I'm marrying someone who doesn't have a good relationship with hers," he said quietly. "They're very traditional. Family first. Your parents not being there, it'll look bad. I don't want them judging you." For a moment, I softened. Back then, it sounded caring, protective, thoughtful. I didn't realize until much later how deeply flawed that reasoning was. He wasn't thinking about me. He was thinking about the image, the optics, the show, how it would look to his extended family. The show mattered more to him than his bride. And I should have seen that. But I didn't. And I paid for it. Finally, after more painful arguments, I agreed to call my parents. But that was where the line was drawn. "I'll invite Mom and Dad," I said firmly. "But no one else. Especially not Talia. There would be no father-daughter dance. There would be no speeches. There would be no sentimental theatrics from a family that never treated me like family. That's the condition," I told Matt firmly. "If they come as guests, nothing more. No grand gestures, no emotional scenes." His shoulders dropped a little, but he nodded. "Okay," he said quietly. "If that's what you need, I'll respect it." He knew he didn't have much of a choice. I also warned him, "Do not contact them. At all. I'm the only one who calls, and only when I decide. If you reach out first, they'll twist everything, they'll bring Talia, and I can't." I paused, swallowing hard. "I won't deal with that." He looked like he understood, though something in his expression made me think he suspected my true plan, that if I told them late enough, they might not come. He didn't call me out on it, though. He stayed silent. So that was that. 6 weeks before the wedding, I finally picked up the phone and called my parents. Mom sounded almost triumphant. "Of course we'll be there," she said. "The entire family will come to support you." I cut her off immediately. "No. Absolutely not. Only you and Dad are invited. If Talia shows up, I will escort all of you out myself." There was a sharp inhale on the other end. Then Dad spoke, tone heavy with disapproval. "This is the perfect chance to reunite the family. Stop being childish." Mom chimed in bitterly, "You've already had your revenge, Sophia. Isn't that enough?" My jaw clenched. "This is the only contact I'm having with you before the wedding. You know the venue, you know the time. If you want to come, come. If you try anything, I will take necessary steps." And before they could lecture me again, I disconnected the call. I honestly thought that warning would be enough. But of course it wasn't. I should have known better. Talia always manages to seep into places she's not wanted. A week before the wedding, my parents flew in and checked into a hotel. They called to say they had something for me and wanted me to come with Matt. Every instinct told me this was a terrible idea. "I don't want to deal with them right now," I told Matt. "Not a week before the wedding. I can't handle the emotional garbage." He took my hand gently. "You won't be alone. I'll be there. If anything feels off, we walk out." "Okay." That reassurance was the only reason I agreed. When we entered the hotel suite, the air felt wrong instantly. Heavy. Too quiet. And then I saw her. Talia. Sitting there as if she belonged in my life. My body went cold. I literally froze in place. My parents smiled weakly as if they were doing me a favor. "We thought," my mother began, "this was the perfect moment for a heart-to-heart. A reconciliation." I didn't hear much after that. Words floated around the room, empty, rehearsed, manipulative. Matt sat down, confused, trying to understand. My parents talked. Talia sat there. My ears rang. My mind shut down. All I could see was an ambush. A few minutes later, reality snapped back into place. I stood abruptly, grabbed Matt's wrist and said, "We're leaving." He resisted, confused. "Wait, can't we just talk this out? Maybe it's not." I cut him off sharply. "I'm leaving. If you want to sit here and play happy families with them, go ahead." And I walked out. I checked into a hotel by myself, still shaking. I texted him only once. "I'm at the hotel. I'll talk when I feel better." Then I turned my phone off. I drank an entire bottle of wine that night, an awful idea, but everything felt too heavy, too raw. When I woke the next morning, head pounding, I turned my phone back on, expecting messages from him. Nothing. Not a missed call. Not a text. Not even a question asking if I was okay. It felt wrong. Matt never gave me space like this. He hated unresolved conflict. He always reached out, always tried to fix things quickly. But hours passed. Still nothing. That's when the panic became real. That night I finally called him. Straight to voicemail. No explanation. No apology. Just silence. And that silence said everything. He had ghosted me. A week before the wedding. I still can't talk about those 7 days in detail. Even now, it knots my stomach. But by the end of it, I knew. The wedding wasn't happening. He wasn't talking to me. He wasn't talking to his family. No one knew where he was. It was like he'd just vanished from the world entirely. So I picked up the phone, called the caterers, the florist, the decorator, the venue, and said the words I never thought I'd have to say. "The wedding is off." I blocked him on the day of our wedding. I remember doing it with hands that wouldn't stop trembling, staring at his name on the screen, feeling something inside me snap as my thumb hit block. I packed a small bag and stayed with a friend while I tried to figure out how to breathe again. Everything I had built, dreamt of, planned for, gone in an instant. 2 months later, I found out the truth. Matt had married Talia. On the exact day he was supposed to marry me. When I heard it, I genuinely thought someone was playing a sick joke. "That's impossible," I said out loud, voice shaking. "He met her a week ago." A week. But it wasn't a joke. It felt like I had been dropped into a nightmare. Like the ground had collapsed beneath me. I couldn't understand how he could behave that way, why he'd make a decision that catastrophic, or how he could end up tying himself to the very sister I'd warned him about my entire life. It made no sense. I broke down completely. I cried until my face hurt. It felt like Talia had won all over again, like every terrible pattern of my childhood had followed me into adulthood and swallowed me whole. Those were some of the darkest days I'd ever lived through. I had to rebuild myself from the ground up. Piece by piece. Emotion by emotion. And it took everything I had not to check their social media, not to ask mutual friends, not to monitor the train wreck they'd created. But I didn't. I forced myself not to. Eventually I started doing better. Truly better. And then yesterday happened. My phone rang. Nancy. Matt's mother. I stared at the screen for a long time before answering. When I finally picked up, her voice was already breaking. "Sophia," she said, breathless, please meet me. Just once. I need to talk to you." "I don't think that's a good idea," I said quietly. "I don't want anything to do with this anymore." But she kept pleading, actually crying, her voice raw with desperation. Please, Sophia. I'm begging you. Just one conversation." I'd never heard her sound like that before. And maybe, just maybe, I thought meeting her would finally give me closure. But even thinking about opening that wound again made my stomach twist. I felt helpless, conflicted, exhausted. When I finally sat across from Nancy later, the look on her face was a storm of pain, guilt, and sorrow. And that's when she told me everything. After I stormed out of the hotel room that day, my parents and Talia had fed Matt some elaborate story about my childhood, painting themselves as victims and me as unstable, cruel, ungrateful. And the worst part? He believed them. Every single word. "That's why he didn't reach out to you," Nancy said, wiping her face. "He wasn't thinking straight. He was devastated. Confused." I stared at her, stunned. She continued, And then when you canceled the caterers and decorators, he got the confirmation calls. He panicked. He thought you were ending the wedding. My throat tightened. So he just believed I was in the wrong? Nancy nodded slowly. He thought it confirmed what your parents told him. She said Matt had fallen apart after that, spiraling in confusion and fear. Instead of talking to his own family, he went to mine. To them. For advice. And they told him, God, I could hardly believe this part, that he could just marry Talia for the ceremony, that it would keep him from facing the humiliation of being left at the altar. And later, once things settled down, they could annul or divorce quietly. Nancy shook her head in disbelief. We all told him it was insane, she said. We begged him to cancel the wedding instead. But he wasn't hearing us. He didn't want the shame. That's all it came down to. So he married her. And ever since, Talia refused to let him go. She refused a divorce. She hinted at demanding hefty alimony. She dragged the marriage out, manipulating him every step of the way. It was a disaster from start to finish. And then, a few days ago, everything changed. Nancy told me that Talia, drunk and sloppy, finally confessed everything to Matt. How they had trapped him. How foolish he had been. How she had stolen my essay years ago. How my parents had lied. How every narrative they fed him was fabricated. Matt had broken down. He hadn't gone home. He hadn't answered anyone's calls. He shut everyone out completely. Only 2 days ago did Nancy finally reach him. He's devastated, she said softly. He said he made the biggest mistake of his life. He said he doesn't know how to apologize to you. He said he deserves the pain he's in. Her voice cracked. He just wants a chance to talk to you, to explain his side, and then the two of you can decide what to do. I stared at her, shock rippling through me, then steadied myself. I said very clearly, there is no Matt in me. There never will be. If he thinks otherwise, he's delusional. Nancy inhaled sharply, but I continued, my voice cold and steady. I have zero intention of speaking to him. Not now. Not ever. He made his choices. He dug his hole. And he can rot in it. I leaned back, letting the words settle. He's legally my sister's husband. No matter how twisted the path was that led them there, I'm not stepping into it. I'm not touching any of it. I met her eyes, unflinching. I refused to insert myself into their chaos or lift a finger to pull him out. Nancy broke down the moment the words left my mouth. Her sobs echoed through the quiet room, raw and desperate, like something inside her had split open. Please, she whispered, clutching her hands together. Please reconsider. Just one conversation. Just hear him out. I felt my jaw tighten. My answer is no. She shook her head violently as if refusing to accept it. A single conversation might change everything, she insisted. You owe it to yourself to hear him just once. After everything, don't you want closure? Her pleading was relentless. It pressed against me, suffocated me. I felt the familiar tightness in my chest, that drowning sensation I hadn't felt since the worst days of my life. I said I'd think about it, I muttered finally, not because I meant it but because I needed to escape the pressure crushing my lungs. I stood, grabbed my bag and walked out without another word. The moment the door shut behind me, the weight of that encounter hit me all at once. It was like my mind became a tangled storm, thoughts colliding, emotions ripping through me, fear and anger twisting together until I couldn't tell one from the other. Since then, Nancy has sent several messages. Long ones. Short ones. Some frantic, some heartbreakingly gentle. Each one felt like a tug at the part of me that used to care, used to feel responsibility for other people's feelings. But I left every message unread. I refused to let her words pull me back into a life I had fought so hard to escape. I'm at a complete loss. I feel like I'm standing on the edge of a cliff, looking down at everything I clawed my way out of. The thought of diving back into that emotional wreckage makes my stomach twist painfully. I don't have the strength to revisit that kind of pain. In the end, nothing dramatic happened. Nothing cinematic. Nothing like the twists people expect in stories. For the sake of my sanity, the fragile peace I built piece by piece, I chose not to meet Matt. Instead, I sent Nancy a message. One final message. I typed slowly, carefully, feeling each word settle like a stone. I'm sorry for everything you're going through. Truly. But Matt made this mess himself. He chose to believe virtual strangers, my manipulative family, over the woman he claimed to love. All because he was afraid of a little social embarrassment. I stared at the screen before continuing. A year ago, I was in the darkest place of my life. Abandoned. Shattered. Alone. I didn't have parents comforting me. I didn't have a family checking on me. Matt had a support system. I had nothing. And he still squandered his chance with me. My fingers trembled slightly as I added, "Forgiveness isn't free. He hasn't earned it. And I'm not giving it." I hit send. Then immediately blocked her number. No more guilt trips. No more emotional manipulation disguised as concern. No more intrusions into my healing. I know some people will think I'm heartless or cruel for refusing to help him claw his way out of the pit he dug. But deep inside I see it differently. This is the universe balancing the scales. Karma delivering a long overdue reckoning. I had to climb out of my own abyss with no lifeline, no one offering help, no one saving me. I rebuilt myself from ruins, stone by stone. Why shouldn't he experience the same isolation? Why shouldn't he feel the same ache of regret? It's only fair that he faces the consequences of his own cowardice without me swooping in to rescue him. I hope, God, I truly hope, this is the last I ever hear from any of them. But a part of me knows they might try again. Through another phone. Through a mutual friend. Some other sneaky, indirect way. But I've drawn a hard, unbreakable line. I won't engage. I won't read. I won't respond. I won't acknowledge their existence. Whatever Matt chooses to do next, stay trapped in that sham of a marriage or fight tooth and nail to escape it, is his burden to carry with Talia, his so-called wife. My heart has no affection left for either of them. That well dried up the moment the truth surfaced. This is the end for me. A clean severance from a lifetime of toxicity. And strangely, knowing how deeply this has wrecked him gives me a quiet, unexpected sense of closure. A solemn peace. It helps me sleep at night. The realization that he finally understands the magnitude of what he destroyed, the love he discarded, the future he threw away over a fleeting whisper of judgment, settles something inside me. Let that lesson sink deep. Stupidity like his comes with a steep price and he's paying it in full. Yet despite all of this, I spent days oscillating between anger and a hollow numbness. Part of me kept replaying Nancy's tear-streaked face in my mind, the way her voice cracked as she pleaded, "Please, Sophia. Please don't shut the door completely." I hated how that image clung to me. It made me wonder whether my refusal came from self-preservation, or something darker. Something like vengeance. But every single time that doubt crept in, I forced myself to remember the timeline. The ambush meeting. Matt's silence afterward. The wedding I had to cancel alone. And then the final blow, discovering he'd married Talia on the very day I was meant to walk down the aisle. That was not a misunderstanding. It was a deliberate chain of betrayals. Nancy's revelations, Talia's drunken confession, Matt's breakdown, none of that erased the hurt. If anything, it underscored how all of this could have been avoided. If he had trusted me even a fraction, none of this would have happened. I spent nights journaling, scribbling furiously until my hand cramped, pouring out resentment toward my parents for orchestrating the lies, toward Talia for her endless sabotage, and toward Matt for choosing optics over loyalty. Therapy helped too. I remember one session clearly. My counselor leaned forward and said gently, "Boundaries aren't brutality. They're survival." Hearing that made something inside me loosen. Blocking Nancy hadn't been a rash decision, it had been necessary. A shield to protect the progress I'd clawed toward. People often misunderstand karma, think it's about revenge or ill will. But to me it wasn't that. It was about equilibrium. About the universe balancing what had been painfully uneven for far too long. I rebuilt myself alone. New routines, healthier friendships. A promotion at work that demanded a laser-like focus I had carved out from grief. And Matt's family, despite their perfect, loving exterior, had enabled his panic-driven choices by not intervening forcefully when he started to spiral. Now they were grappling with the fallout of that passivity. I pitied Nancy as a mother, of course I did, but pity doesn't equal responsibility. His actions aren't your burden, my counselor reminded me once. The consequences belong to him. And they did. If Matt truly regretted what he'd done, he would have to show it through actions that did not involve me. Legal battles. Therapy. Detangling himself from Talia's grip without reaching for me as a lifeline. None of that was my fight. My closure came from detachment, from understanding that their chaos was a self-contained storm I no longer needed to stand in. Sleep comes easier now, unburdened by what-ifs. The chapter is sealed, the book closed, and I'm turning the page to a future unshadowed by their mistakes. Love this story? Like, share, and subscribe for more epic audio adventures. Stay curious and keep listening.